Hey guys, what's going on? This is Adam Brown with the 2448 Show. Every Monday night at 6, you can join me and Connor Smith as we break down all the football action 24 hours after NFL Sunday and 48 hours after college football Saturday on WMTS 88.3 Murfreesboro. Welcome back to the 2448 Show. I'm your host, Adam Brown. Your producer and mine is Connor Smith. And we have Junnie Riddle on the show today from 102.5 The Game. Junnie, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Adam. Thank you for allowing me to come on. I appreciate talking to a new audience, talking some Titans, man.
Absolutely. We appreciate you doing it. So here's our take on the Titans so far this season. We've been pretty consistent, is that Will Levis looks impressive, but does not have the O-line that he needs to win any meaningful games this season. But the word tank is kind of gross. We don't like that here on this show. So how do you have a mindset if you're with the Titans of this season is probably not going to be a success without giving up?
So for me, I think once you made the move from Ryan Tannehill to quarterback Will Levis, it was all about the development of him. The way I look at the Titans, I know a lot of Titans fans had some hefty expectations. They felt that, the injuries last year kind of held this team back, and that was the prime reason for them losing 7 in a row and losing that final game to Jacksonville, and ultimately missing the playoffs when, they were right there to make it. So, a lot of people were coming in with high hopes. For me, I looked at what the Titans did this offseason and felt like, they were trying to piece together a season to extend this run that they've been on for the last couple of years, one extra year when everything was telling them in 22 that it was kind of over. So, they came into the season with the mindset that they were going to compete. Clearly they are not. So I think now that they have moved to the rookie quarterback in Will Levis, it's really all about seeing like what young pieces you have and watching these guys in certain moments in the games that are remaining on the schedule to see what they have. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are things that Titans fans can be hopeful for, and what kind of moves can make this team a competitor? So for me, this season as it stands right now, I think it would take a lot for the Titans to make the playoffs. I could see them kind of making some noise with, having more home games, because we've seen this team play better at home than they do on the road. So, maybe they do kind of jump back into the conversation late in the year, but I don't think it's going to be enough. So to answer your question, I really do think that it's all about seeing what you have this year, what pieces can be added in the offseason, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of these young players like a Will Levis, a Tajay Spears, a Chigakonkwo, a Traylon Burks, guys that they're going to hopefully rely on for years to come, and see how they can improve on those players and get assets to really bolster this roster.
So you touched on something there that scares me a little bit, and it's the Titans making some noise down the stretch a little bit. And with Mike Vrabel at head coach, I feel like you're always going to be some sort of competitive, but I don't think this roster is in a position where they can afford to have anything outside of a top 10 pick. As in, I think this is a bottom 10 roster, and if they outperform that number and maybe get a higher pick, like somewhere in the back half, that's not what this team needs. So the personal fear for me looking at it is if they decide to wake up a little bit with these home games and they outperform maybe the actual talent they have on this roster, they won't get the help they need in the draft.
So, and I see what you're saying here, but I think it's more important for these young players, especially a rookie quarterback, to build confidence in something to look forward to and to be hopeful for going into the 2024 season. That's what I think is more important, because what would you rather have? Would you rather get a top 10 pick and have your quarterback's confidence in shambles and kind of and wary going into the 2024 season, or would you rather kind of get maybe a middle of the road pick somewhere in the low teens, kind of like you did this past year, and then come in, feeling very confident with the quarterback that you have? I would choose the latter. I would rather Levis kind of reel off some wins here in the back end, kind of build some confidence. And here's why in particular, and why I'm not as worried about the Titans being a top 10 draft pick selector, is because number one, they built this roster up really when John Robinson was still at the helm at GM, and they were still picking in the teens, and they still found very valuable players in that area in the early years in 2016 and 17, 18, 19, when they went and got Jeffrey Simmons and A.J. Brown and company in that big draft that led to a big pop-off year in 2019. So I feel like this team should try and win as many games to get these guys experience and confidence, and leaving the season off with a good note. And another reason about this too is like this is one of the biggest quarterback classes that we have seen in a very long time. Like it would not surprise me if more than 5 quarterbacks go in the first round. Teams just needing somebody, want to take somebody off potential. Maybe they have an aging quarterback that they would like a guy to sit behind. I think that there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks taken. I could see easily 3 or 4 taken in the top 10. So some of those big top 10 prospects that normally wouldn't be there outside of the top 10, I feel like potentially could be this year with how antsy and the anticipation that some of these teams have with some of these big quarterbacks coming out of college.
So I think we're all in agreement here that the weak spots would be the O-line and wide receiver. And for me personally, I don't think Chig has shown enough so far to where I feel comfortable sticking with him as what you're solely relying on. So moving forward with the good thing about the Kevin Byard trade was now the Titans are either first or second in overall cap space this offseason. The O-line is a hard position to target in free agency because if a team has a good one, he's probably not a free agent. So the free agents are either someone that the team doesn't want to pay or someone that wasn't very good. So I feel like O-line has to be a draft target. So what position group do you think the Titans target with this massive amount of free agency dollars that they have going into this offseason?
That is an excellent question. I think any of these 4 positions the Titans should go after, because I'm all about building your roster, about game-changing players and game-changing positions. And I feel like with what we've seen with Will Levis in these 3 starts, I feel like you can kind of see that there is something there. Is his play perfect? No, but everything around him is honestly kind of awful if you ask me. No run game, receivers dropping balls all over the place. So you have that positive looking forward. So let's take quarterback off the board. You talked about offensive line and receiver. I'm going to name you 2 other positions that this team needs that might be a little bit underrated as well. Corner and edge rusher. Because right now, this Titans defense, as bend and don't break as it is and as solid as they can be statistically, they're not making splash plays. We're not seeing a bunch of sacks. We're not seeing interceptions or tip balls or the secondary just completely taking away a team's opposing number 1 wide receiver. We're seeing a lot of those too. So for me, if I'm the Titans, I would honestly, I would try and get saying the best player available is the easy cop out answer. But for me, you have another year with DeAndre Hopkins next year, so he'll still be on contract. I agree with you on Chig. I don't think he's the answer, but what could we see from Josh Wiley kind of going down the stretch? That could be something interesting to take away another need there. But just depending on where the Titans are. I mean, if they're there to go and get Harrison Jr., Marvin Harrison Jr., I would go and get that kid in a heartbeat. And I kind of been comparing it to this. If the way that the Cincinnati Bengals were with Joe Burrow, I believe his rookie year they were only a 3-win team, and they were picking in the top 5. And that year, Penei Sewell was coming out of Oregon, and everybody was talking about how this is the best tackle draft prospect that we have seen in the last however many years. And the Bengals passed on Penei Sewell, and they ended up drafting Jamar Chase. And what did they do in his rookie year? With Joe Burrow having his guy, they went on and they went to the Super Bowl that season. For me, I feel like the league has changed. to the point where, receivers are one of the most important positions on the field. And I feel like if the Titans do their homework correctly, getting an offensive lineman maybe in the second and third rounds would be more of a valuable pick than using that first round pick where they've kind of swung and missed on guys before. So if it were me, I am going and getting Will Levis, a true certified number one wide receiver of the future, because I feel like that's kind of the direction that the league is going towards, and that will make the biggest impact going forward.
Yeah, Junie, you're talking about getting Will Levis receiver. What guy would you target in the draft?
Well, Marvin Harrison Jr., if they're going to be picking that high, unfortunately, I don't know if they'll be picking that high or not. We're just going to have to wait and see. But if that guy's there, I mean, that's a surefire number one wide receiver. I would be taking him. Also, the tackle out of Notre Dame. I've seen a lot of good things out of him. Again, it's just going to come down to the best player available. There's so many holes on this team, whether you're talking O-line, whether you're talking wide receiver, edge rusher, corner, they need them all. So it's really about finding the best value wherever you're selecting and then going and getting that guy. So if you're picking in the top 5 and everybody else is wanting to go quarterback and Marvin Harrison Jr. is sitting there for you, then you need to go and get that guy, because I think he's a surefire wide receiver. And I think that at this time in the NFL, with where the league is at, I feel like that having a guy like that, a game-changing wide receiver, would be more important than going out and get offensive line, because value-wise, you can go and you're more likely to hit on a wide receiver early in the draft, and you're more likely to miss on an offensive lineman. So I think if you're picking, in the top 10, right outside the top 10, you're still going to have a high pick in the second round, and you can still use that pick to go get somebody. And to the point that, y'all were saying about free agency, Mike McGlinchey for the 49ers, he ended up signing with the Denver Broncos this past year. I do believe that there will be some high caliber offensive linemen. And I feel like going out and getting veterans and then drafting guys in the second and third round, letting them develop under some veterans and maybe kind of build your line gradually that way, that's what I would do. But if you're asking me point blank, what position do I want to go get? I would want to go get that wide receiver one, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is 1,000% on the top of the list for that.
Yeah, my second question is, most of the talk is about offensive line and receivers for Will Levis. I also think that the secondary needs some work. So would you go through like the draft process or like a free agency or trade for secondary?
Again, that's all going to kind of come down to, who's available. Like, what teams are going to be, selling this offseason, what teams are not going to want to be paying some guys. I'm not yet diving into the draft and diving into, free agency yet, but Patrick Surtain, for the Broncos, I know that his name was out there as a potential guy to go out and get. And I know that, the Broncos got a big win over the Chiefs right before the trade deadline. And then they started, kind of rescinding all of those rumors that were kind of going out to the media. So I feel like some of those guys that maybe were rumored around the trade deadline, like a Patrick Surtain, could be available. Justin Simmons for the Broncos, a really good safety. He was tied with the league lead with 6 interceptions last year. He might also be available. With Kevin Byard gone, getting a big time safety like that could also help. It's just like I said, guys. It's all about value. It's all about what you can get, where you're drafting, who's going to be available, and with all the money and all the free agents, with Henry coming off the books, with Tannehill coming off the books, a lot of these older veterans, they're going to have a lot of money to play with, and it's going to be up to Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel to map this out and say, listen, first off season with us together didn't go so hot. We went out and we were kind of, in the discount line. We were shopping at Goodwill, picking up all these, these teams' backups, whether it was Arden Key or Azeez Al-Shaair or Daniel Brunskill, all Andre Dillard, like all these guys were backups. So with the money that they're going to have in free agency, they got to find what's the best bang for their buck and really kind of positioned themselves when it comes to the draft and finding the best value. And again, I'm just going to keep pressing that over and over again. What is the best value for this team to make a big turnaround? Because when you're playing a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal, this is go for it time. The cycle has now reset. So it's up to the Titans for this offseason, which I think is going to be the most pivotal offseason that they've had in the last, 5, 6, 7 years to really try and bolster this roster and see if they can make a big jump next year.
I'm glad you mentioned Mike Vrabel basically working with the discount line last offseason, because there's been a lot of Titans fan base talk about blaming Vrabel and moving on from Vrabel and Vrabel Patriots rumors. To me, none of that is very fair, considering that Vrabel is always going to have you competitive, and B, he just hasn't had the guys that he needs to be successful. So the blaming Vrabel after a year removed of firing your GM, I think is completely unbased, because firing your GM signifies that the person that has been over personnel has not been successful and has not done an acceptable job. So to me, it's unfair to then the very next year, less than a year removed from firing that GM, you're going to immediately start blaming the head coach. So I think the fan base needs a little bit of a reset on A, expectations, and B, priorities moving forward.
I think it is a bit of a give and take, Adam. And I'll say this about Vrabel: has Vrabel been dealt the best cards when it's come to the player personnel? No, I mean, no, he hasn't. And I think that you could kind of carry that excuse, last year with John Robinson's line and John Robinson's players and the decisions he made, especially hyphenating the AJ Brown trade to Philadelphia before the 22 draft. I get all those things, but when you're the head coach and the ownership chooses you over the GM, that kind of puts you in a higher hierarchy automatically, because you're the more senior. You're the more senior guy in the organization than a Rand Carthon, who is just now coming in, getting his footing in the league, hasn't been a GM before. So, automatically Vrabel's going to have more say until Carthon, kind of proves himself a little bit. I just think that that's going to be your natural thought process. So looking at these moves and seeing, what was done, I feel like a lot of these moves had to have Vrabel's stamp of approval. So if we're going to blame John Robinson last year, you kind of got to put some of the blame on Mike Vrabel this year, because again, I feel like him being the senior guy in the building, I felt like Rand Carthon coming in and Amy Adams Strunk pushing this collaboration. I want you two to work together. Vrabel had to be the one that said, I want to keep Tannehill. I want to keep Henry. I want to keep this veteran group, and I want to, have one last year to go after it, because I felt like our season last season was derailed by injuries and not lack of productivity from these veterans. And he was wrong. And so now we're kind of seeing the effects of that. Do I think Vrabel needs to be fired after this year? No, I think that's ridiculous. But to sit here and say that, Titans management wouldn't be considering it, seeing that this franchise is at a crossroads, you're getting a fresh start with a rookie quarterback, is Vrabel the guy to pull you out of this losing streak and put you back into contention through a rebuild? Is he the guy to do it? Or did he get hired at the right time with the right roster and things kind of fell in place for him? And because of the kind of coach he is, did he get the most out of a really good veteran group? And maybe he is not the guy for the rebuild. I feel like that is – I don't think that should be out of bounds to think about going into the season. But if you're asking me plain and simple, should he be fired or not, I don't think what he has done to this date is warrant to firing. It's just up to the Titans to know whether or not he is the guy going forward that can lead this team out of a rebuild and get them back into contention. That is what needs to be on the Titans' front page of this rebuild.
I think that's an extremely fair flip side to the coin. But before we let you go, I guess the main question is it fair to expect more than what this team has done so far out of Vrabel, considering the position this roster is in that we know is bad based off of the firing of the GM?
I think it would be fair, because again, back to my point that I was just kind of reading off there. It was his decision to bring back a Tannehill, to bring back a Henry, and to not kind of start going towards that. So when you make the choice to bring back the veteran group that you have been in the playoffs year in and year out, after a year that you lost 7 straight, now granted injuries had to do with that, it is your responsibility to make sure that that core plays up to the standard under which you brought them back for. So when I look at it from that lens, I feel like, yeah, this Titans team has underachieved. Do I think that Tampa Bay is that much better than them? No, I really don't. Do I think the Steelers were that much better than them? No, I don't. The Colts? No. I feel like there was some games that could have easily been won, and the fact that some of these veterans that were brought in by Carthon and by Vrabel, and also having Tannehill stay at the helm, has cost them games. And I felt like if you wanted to move towards the future sooner, it might have paid off earlier. But now that you waited to do that, you're kind of stuck in a hole, and this made this season kind of a wash. There was winnable games. Saints game was winnable. The Colts game was winnable. The Steelers game was winnable. This Bucks game I felt like was winnable. And again, it's just they're doing things at the wrong times, and this personnel and the choices that they made in the offseason are what's affecting this team now. And so I feel like, yes, he does have some room to accept some of that failure.
Well, Junnie, thanks so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. If you want some more Junnie Riddle, you can find him at 1025 The Game and on Riddle and The Reporter. Thanks so much, Junnie.
Absolutely, guys. Y'all have a great night.
You too. That was Junnie Riddle of 1025 The Game here on the 2448 show. Connor, he made some really great points about kind of the flip side to the Vrabel coin.
Yeah, it's always great to hear from him, but his points were very, very accurate as always.
Yeah. So moving forward for the Titans, hit us up on Twitter. Is it fair to expect more out of Vrabel and Carthon given the position that this roster is in, or do you agree with Junnie that it's on Mike Vrabel for trying to run it back one more year with these veteran pieces? When we come back, we will have our SEC and Titan picks for the weekend. And we've got a Mike Vrabel clip to react to, so don't go anywhere.